and welcome to Worried About Nothing. Today we decided we were going to talk about fear masquerading as love. I'm Danielle,
And I'm Kim.
and welcome to our show. So, this is a topic that I'm kind of struggling with at the moment. I kind of know and can sense when fear is masquerading as love, but I don't have that strong enough truth to be like, nope, that's fear. So, I'm bringing it up today so Kim and I can discuss it and maybe ground the idea that exists within me into a deeper truth. So Kim,
Great.
if you have any insights, please. I need some help.
Well, first of all, I think it's a great topic. I think it's very, very relevant. And it's something that happens all the time, I believe. I feel that fear masquerades as love constantly because it's like this post I've seen a few times that's been going around, and it's actually about truth and lies. But to me, it's the same thing because truth is love and lies are fear. And it said something along the lines, and I'm going to really, really corrupt this, but something along the lines of lies, i.e., fear, being much more palatable to people because truth, i.e., love, is very stark in some ways, in that there's no pretense about it. There's no making you feel good about yourself. There's no sucking up to you or, stroking the ego or any of that kind of thing. Whereas lies and fear can do that so easily and so often do. And I feel that the majority of people, in my experience anyway, don't really know what love is. And what they do is they project fear. It's all controlling. So unless love is completely objective and there is nothing in it for the person, then there is a measure of control and there's a measure of fear, so whether it be, I love you, so you must do X, Y, Z, or I love you, so you will never leave me, or I love you, so you will do what I want, or any of the other myriad examples out there, it's all fear because anything that has an expectation of another person or some measure of control is a contraction. And a contraction by definition can't be love because love is expansive, it's open, there's no contraction to it. And it's almost, true love, as in God's love, spiritual love, is extremely objective. There's no emotion to it. It's just love. And in those moments when I felt that, it's just so neutral that everything is fine, in that, any person that you love can do anything they like because it has nothing to do with you. So whenever you attach yourself to that love or attach yourself to that person through this, in inverted commas, link of love, by trying to control their behavior or their thoughts or their words or anything else, it's not love. So, and a very common fear is fear of loss or fear of death, so fear of the death of a dynamic or death of a relationship or death of a person is all fear driven, it's all fear based. So for me, I'd say that, 90% or 99% of the population don't actually really know what love is because it's always subjective, or so often subjective. And so often there's a deeper motivation underneath it. So it's not, I love you, end of story. It's, I love you and I want you to do this. And I'm going to attach to that because there's this self-preservation aspect to it as well, or some kind of self-reflection aspect to it as well. In that people will often talk about parental love and mother love and all of these things being the purest kind of love. And to a degree they are, but there's so often attachment to it as well of, you are an extension of me. Therefore, the way you behave reflects on me, and the way that you are towards me reflects my own self-worth. There's often very subtle grades or graduations underneath that. So it's not just a pure, I love you because you are you.
I found it interesting that parental love is coming up because it's Father's Day today, the day that we're recording. So I find that interesting. And it does make sense to me that because they're just little stories, and I don't know where they come from, if they're societal or they're passed down or whatever, where they're conceptions of what love is or how you behave in love in relationship to parents, or I guess to anybody else, there's just these stories and these assumptions, but sometimes they're so subtle, kind of like you were saying, they're just so barely there, like, you don't even notice that you have them. Well, I can't speak for parental love because 'cause I'm not a parent, but I could see it, because we all have concepts around love in one way or another. If if I guess it could be in the other way around, is as a child to a parent, if my parent loved me, then XYZ. Or, if my sibling loved me, then XYZ. So I could definitely see that.
Mm. Yeah, and I feel that with love, I feel that with, you know, some of the clearing that's happening and some of the energy at the moment. I mean, the energies are phenomenal at the moment. They're really, really light and full of vib vibrance. That a lot is shifting, and I'm feeling more and more objective in love, in that there's a much deeper neutrality in it. When I think of people that I love, there's no color to it. There's no kind of motion or movement. It's just a very still, neutral, almost just an observation of them in a way. And that kind of, in a way that's very difficult to describe, feels like it's a much deeper and more divine love than feeling that strong emotion for them, because with the emotion comes that kind of attachment. And I feel that real love, true love, is very detached. It's very unattached. It's very neutral. And in some ways, it's interesting because the way that things happen out in the world is often a reflection of what's happening within society, internally. And everything that's happening now with all of the restrictions and the lockdown and all of that could almost be seen as a really corrupted form of manipulation, masquerade or fear, masquerading as love, because the way that they're pushing everything is do this for the safety of others, do this to consider other people. It's not all about you, get the vaccine so you can protect your loved ones, all of this kind of stuff, which is exactly that, is fear masquerading as love. It's not care for others. It's not at all. There's a deeper agenda behind it. But so many people are falling for that, and they are spouting it, almost verbatim. It's because I don't wear a mask, and I know you don't wear a mask. Well, I don't know actually, but I don't wear a mask, and I kind of walk around naked faced all the time, and people will sometimes come up to me and go, "But why, where's your mask? Don't you care about other people?" And my reply always is, "Yes, I do," which is one of the reasons I'm not wearing one. And I go, but that's not what you're supposed to say." So they kind of stop because the conversation hasn't gone the way they expect. But that is, it's almost a corrupted form of that on a global scale. The fear masquerading as love, because the just in my what I see is that the world today doesn't know what love is, and it's like some of the, or the majority of the new age community don't know what spirituality is. It's all a man-made precept that's kind of boxed in and contained, and the edges are rounded off, and it's kind of put into a comfortable box that people can then live in and sort of stand on to lecture others about. It's very much to fit the parameters of what people are comfortable with, because then it makes it safe, and then it makes it palatable, and it makes it acceptable, because it kind of makes it bland in a way. It's sort of like the stock answer. It's kind of like, oh well, because I love you, I'll do this, or because you love me, you'll do that, and it's kind of made acceptable by all of the all the propaganda that happens in films and the media and all of this. And it's all the same kind of love that everyone's talking about, and it's not love. It's all control. It's all a mass control. And these things that people get emotional about in films, I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but sometimes, it's the hero lays his life down for the girl, and says, love me forever, or something else to make her feel incredibly guilty for the rest of her life. It's kind of like, well, that's not love. None of that's love. Set her free if you love her. Don't tie her down. But people accept that as love. That's the definition of it. It's like, oh yes, has to have some kind of exchange. It has to be this, there has to be something in it for me, and that's not love. That's got nothing to do with love. In fact, that's the opposite of love,
Yeah.
in my view anyway. But yeah.
You were talking about the boxes, like how people, we'll put things in a boxes like the new age, right? There's like a box that it fits into and like other things in life. And I think it's kind of a way of dealing with the fear of the unknown. And I think that's why people are so accepting of what they get through the media is because it gives them an answer. They don't like that they don't know what to do about things. So they're like, okay, now this is, I'll take this, I'll hold on to this. This is my answer. This is what we do about this. And then they're not willing to accept any other answer than the one that's been prescribed to them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an end result. So it's kind of 1 + 1 = 2, and it will always equal 2 because this is the way that it's comfortable for me, kind of thing, rather than 1 + 1 can equal anything. You know, it can equal infinity. I don't mean it from a mathematical point of view because I know 1 + 1 = 2, but just in that, you know, one thing plus another thing can have a multitude of results, you know, and
Right.
it doesn't have to be just the stock one.
But you see it in the conversations and interactions you're having with people too, because when they don't get the reaction that they're expecting, they don't know what to do because they were like, "Oh no, you okay? I'll say this. This person will react like that, and then I can argue back like this, and then you completely jam up their programming because they're just like, wait, but you weren't supposed to say that."
It's like Mickey was telling me a story the other day that she went into a shop and the woman came running over and said, "Where's your mask?" Expecting Mickey to go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'll just put it on." And she said, "Oh, I don't wear one." And the woman just stopped dead and froze like she like she turned into a statue because you could see, I do not compute, I do not compute. And Mickey finally had to snap her fingers in front of her face and she went, "Oh, right, yes, how can I help you?"
Hello.
It's like kind of, oops, yes, you just chucked a spanner in the matrix there, you know.
Mm, funny. I did actually was thinking about something else before when you were speaking because we were talking about truth and lies and love and fear. And then I think sometimes when I'm interacting with people, they believe it's the truth, but I know it's a lie. And that's where things get kind of interesting for me. I don't know. There's something there for
Mm.
me.
Yeah. Well, I feel it depends on with that. I think I know where you're going with that in that for me it depends on how I respond to it. So if somebody says something they believe is true and I don't 100% embody the knowledge that it's not true, there's a part of me that even if I do react and say it's not true, they may or may not take it. It's, you know, it's however they respond. But if somebody says something that they believe is true and I've completely embodied the knowledge that what they're saying is a complete lie, I don't even have to say anything. It confuses them. I'm finding this more and more at the moment. So people will come in and say their things that they think are true. And I just look at them and smile. And they go, oh, and it's like the brain kind of melts or something because there's something in the fact that I'm embodying the knowledge that means that it radiates out in some way that I haven't looked at, but that then they receive or they feel the effect of and go, oh God, that's not true. I'm being hit by that's not true, you know, and it's not something that I'm actively sending out. So I'm not aggressively going, oh no, that's a lie. I'll just, you know, like this woman the other day, she came in and she said, oh no, I have to wear my mask because it stops the bigger particles of COVID from getting through, but the smaller particles are okay, you know, because they don't harm me. And I just looked at her and smiled, you know, thinking, what the fuck? But, you know, didn't say anything. And she went, oh, and she got very confused. And I hadn't said anything. I hadn't kind of looked at anything, you know, there was no sort of judgment or anything like that. It was more of a kind of, well, I'm sitting here in this knowledge that that is complete bollocks, but I'm not kind of pushing it at you. And she just lost it. She completely lost it. It was kind of like, I guess it's sort of, if like you were talking earlier, that sort of exchange, you know, that happens, one person says one thing, the other person says the other thing, and the energies gel and it all matches and it becomes this kind of synchronized conversation or whatever. And if, you know, if somebody comes along and says this thing and they're hit by a sort of an energy of, no, that's wrong, you know, or I guess an energy of truth. I don't know exactly what's happening, but then it's almost like their lie is so exposed that they then can't back it up, but they still believe it, but they can't actually back it up or continue with it because there's nowhere to go with it. But they may or may not be willing to let go of the ideas, but there's some kind of break that happens there, I believe. Well, that's what it looks like to me anyway. So I don't know if that's what you were meaning.
Oh, I don't know. I just knew that there was something there in terms of thinking about, because it just, there's something that isn't completely, I guess, something I'm not completely aware of when that's happening, of what's occurring for me. It's I guess it's kind of new territory, because it's a lot easier, right? If someone's lying, they know they're lying, and you know they're lying. That's pretty straightforward. But if you feel like someone believes what they're saying is true, but you know it's a lie, it's like you can't. How do how do you interact with something like that, right? Because they believe it's true. So it's like you can't. I don't know. It's just really interesting. It's an interesting territory to kind of navigate in now.
Mm.
And I think it's just really prevalent because I think a lot of people have been pushed a lot of lies that they truly believe are true. So it's interesting to interact with people. Some people aren't as rigid though about holding on to what they've heard.
Mm.
Um, but the people that are, I'm just like, I'm like, I don't even know what to do. But I think this is a good segue kind of into the truth not having to argue. And I think that's kind of like an example of what you just spoke about, is that you just know the truth so deeply. You didn't even have to say anything to the person. You just knew it, and you could tell something was kind of knocked loose within them. And I think that is what happens. And I guess part of, because we know that with love and truth, it doesn't always look peaceful. Sometimes there's action to it too. So I think that's something that scrambles me a little bit. I'm like, well, do I say this? I'm like, where is it coming from? Is it because, because I have some sort of stories around the beliefs that I hold, and am I holding on too strongly? Or is this, a movement of truth that I'm kind of hindering because I'm like, oh no, what might, the reaction be, depending on whatever the circumstance is.
Mm. But I think it's either one is fine, because the important thing is to act on truth as it flows through you in that moment, and the truth that flows through you in that moment is always, not always, but often partly blurred by, beliefs and thoughts and all of these kind of things. But you can't second guess yourself with it, because then you're blocking the dam, and as you clear more and more, truth will become purer, will become more, well, will become different. It's like I had a conversation with Aratima the other day. It was our session, as part of the Ascension package. And I think we were talking about what she said in the group about, I've been doing the Saraswati mantra. And, she'd said that the truth is not hidden from me now, in that I can always tell when people are lying. I've always had a kind of truth bell that goes off, but now it's just like it's so blatantly obvious when people lie that it's almost like somebody said, "I'm a banana," and I'm like, right, okay, yes, well done. But, but like in this session, we were talking about that, and she said that I'm similar to her in that there's that kind of Kali-esque sort of movement of fire that comes out sometimes. And she said, "Oh, it's good. It seems like for you it's calmed down a little bit." I said, "Yeah, it's true, it has." And I kind of feel that there's no right or wrong to it, in that a while back it would come out, this is just absolute blast of fire would come out, and I'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about, you complete rah?" And that was fine in that it was true then, but now it seems that it's not always the case. So now I can just look at somebody, and instead of feeling that fire, I can hear the lies, and I feel the pain of the clang, people blatantly lying. And sometimes there is still a reaction in that there'll be rage that feels like moving through or whatever it is. But sometimes it's just, all I just feel is this completely objective love for them. And I think maybe that's partly what sometimes confuses them, is that where they're expecting some kind of response from me, whether it be an argument or an agreement or something, they'll just get absolute nothing. They'll get neutrality. They'll get nothing whatsoever back. And because they don't know what love is, they're confused by it, because there's no emotion there. It's just nothingness, and they'll kind of go, "Oh, I don't know how to respond to this," So I feel that with what you're saying, it's kind of like, well, whatever comes through in the moment is true right then. And it might not be true the next minute, and it might be true, it might completely change the next day. But I think the thing not to do is, from my experience anyway, the thing for me not to do is censor myself. So even if the truth comes out, or even if something comes out and it's clumsy or clunky or whatever it is, if it's true in that moment, it's fine, it's true. Because I think otherwise you can spend so much time trying to kind of hone truth to what, in a way, it's almost like turning love into fear because you're censoring yourself so much and you're going, okay, so what is really truth? Okay, I'll make it palatable. Okay, that's acceptable. Then I can say that. It's kind of, it's restricting the flow of truth and the flow of love. Because in my mind, truth and love are the same, or at least they feel the same to me. It's just letting them both flow in whatever form they are. And it's kind of like, when you undam a river, what first flows out is kind of dirty because it's the dam bits and all that stuff, but at least it's flowing, and then it gets clearer and clearer and clearer until it's the beautiful mountain stream that comes through. So that's how I feel it with truth, in that sometimes it will still come out and there's bits of dirt and there's bits of dam broken and all that, but at least the force of it is the water. So hopefully over time more and more of it will be the water and less of it will be the kind of broken bricks and bits. you know
Yeah. It's the I guess just wanting to make sure it's not coming from a reactive place, that it's actually coming from a place of neutrality. And I think that's kind of what I take the time to look at. And then at the same time, I don't know if that's, still dampening truth by taking the time to be like, is this coming from a place of reaction? Because I was like, I could just do it and explore that later. I don't know if that's the best way to go, but it might be worth trying out, I guess, because I guess I haven't really done it the other way, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things unfold, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it is hard though. I mean, as you said, everyone is being indoctrinated in these lies. You hear them all day, from unexpected people as well. So sometimes it'll be people that you wouldn't ever have imagined to have fallen for this indoctrination who do. And when they say it, sometimes it can be that double whammy of, oh, not only are you lying to my face, but I'm very surprised that you were lying to me. And that can be interesting, or sometimes not as easy to accept or hear.
Yeah. I think part of this stuff for me too is just needing to let go of like trying to help people to see the truth. You know, it's, and sometimes I don't care. But then I guess I also have judgment come up about not caring because I'm like, shouldn't I care? About helping these people or whatever. But I guess the main thing though that I'm starting to come to is seeing everybody as whole, right? Because all of my fears and stuff that come up around it has to be from a judgment of these other people not being whole, right? That it's not perfect for them, that they're so potentially falling for, the lies. But that, who am I to judge that, really? And I know that on a mental level, but I need, that to be integrated more in me because I feel those types of emotions coming up and I'm just like, I guess I'm just glad I can see them, you know? And I'm glad that I get a little bit of both though, of like not caring and feel like I should care, and also like, really wanting to try to shift it because then at least I kind of have a balance there instead of being so locked into one side or the other for a period of time. So,
Can I ask you something though? So when you're in those moments of not caring, is it not caring or is it neutrality, would you say?
that's a good question. Well, sometimes I do feel like there is a little bit polluted of like kind of like anger, just because from a frustration standpoint of being like you're gonna learn some way. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's not gonna be through me, but you're gonna be shown at some point in some way. So there is a little bit of that, which is definitely not neutrality. Yeah.
I just ask because sometimes when I'm in that place of neutrality, it's like you don't care about anything really, or anyone, you love them, but there's no kind of emotion about it. So it does sometimes, I guess it could be interpreted as not caring because there isn't that sort of sympathetic, oh my God, kind of thing, or angle to it. So I was just curious about your experiences. Yeah.
No, that was good to bring up because I feel like I cycle through the three. It's kind of like something might trigger it, and I'll be like, oh, I really wish that I could get them to see this differently, or make them understand or whatever, and then it's like, okay, well, I guess they'll learn one way or another, and then it kind of falls into like, well, God creates everything perfectly, and I started like, I know that this is a thing. I was like, it's just not fully realized for me where like I have moments of it where I really know that I really experience it, but it's not consistent, through my experience all the time where I can just see things that way or experience things that way. Is probably a better way to put it, is experience things really in the way that they more truly are, of everything being perfect. So it's just, I guess, chipping away or allowing all of those things to be triggered in me and to just let them be there,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Stop squashing them down.
Yeah. 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 But I guess also at the moment, with all of the energies that are shifting, there's so much that's energy that's being expended, that you can feel it every day, and it feels like because the energies are ascending and getting lighter, the contrast or the kind of the fear, I guess, it's a very topical subject that you've got us talking about today. The fear is increased as well, and they're ramping up the fear. The governments are ramping up the fear. So because of that, there is a lot of energy that's being expended. So I think we're all having a lot of energy that's moving through us, more and more than we would have done. And I think because of our studying with Aratima, we have more capacity to have more moving through us as well. That a lot of the things that we would be experiencing aren't ours at the moment. So, some of this anger or rage or whatever else you might be feeling and other people might be feeling may not be yours. It might just be a kind of, oh my God, that's moving through right now, and I want to claw your face off, kind of thing. But it's not you. It's not yours, in that respect.
It's a good point because I feel like rage is something that I identified with for a while. So even if it was somebody else's rage, I think I would probably just say that it was my own. Like, you know what I mean? Because it was just something that I was such a familiar feeling for me that I would probably be like, no, that's mine.
Yeah.
I recognize that one. That belongs
Yeah.
to me. But yeah, no, you're right. And really, anyway, emotions, they aren't things for us to identify with anyway, but that does show me that as well. So it wouldn't surprise me though if a lot of this wasn't mine. The frustration, probably like a lot of frustration, because we have a lot of people who are in the same boat as us, and they're like just trying to get people to understand and be like, okay, like, can we, or they just want to move on with things, or like, can we get to like another point in this timeline? So I could see that, yeah, it's probably being ramped up, just in general anyway, and the fear so much so too, like the talk of new variants and whatever. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it feels like a bit of a slog, but maybe it's just because, the intensity of the light is exposing more and more. So I'm like, oh, here's more of it, and like, okay. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But it is a funny thing as well with fear and love, in that I find that sometimes people are more comfortable pretending that fear is love. They're much more comfortable with fear than they are with love. Because in some ways, fear is a known quantity, and it is a strong emotion. So it responds to that need to have some kind of emotion. But not talking about the blind panic fear, but just fear as a constant underlying emotion in life. Sometimes people seem to almost enjoy that, and enjoy, they wouldn't call it fear, but enjoy that kind of destructive emotion. It's like relationships, when you have those really, really symbiotic, unhealthy type relationships where there's absolutely no love there. It's all about mutual destruction, but people seem to really enjoy that in some way. They'll say that they hate it, or they'll try and get away from it, but they'll keep returning to it, and they'll keep repeating it in relationships moving forwards. So there is something that they're getting from it, and it's almost like, I guess it responds to that. If a person doesn't know what love is, and they certainly wouldn't know how to love themselves, then the only thing they know about is the opposite, which is beating themselves up and putting themselves down. And so fear masquerading as love would perfectly fit that need, of the fear of loss or the fear of being hurt or the fear of being cheated on or the fear of being abandoned or the fear of any of the other fears that come with this, in inverted commas, love that they're used to or they crave or they, are looking for.
I agree with you because I feel like it's familiar. People are in this state of fear all the time. I think most of the time, or at least it was my experience, that it's a kind of a low level fear or worry that you're not even aware of. And then when you feel good or you have a day where you're not worried about things, it's like, oh, shouldn't I be thinking about this? Shouldn't I, shouldn't there be some sort of something going on? And I don't know. I guess it's just because it was familiar to be in that constant thinking mode. I think that's the other thing too, is like there's so much thinking, emphasis on thought and being in your mind that you can't, like, if it's still and silent, people are like, oh, something must be wrong. What happened?
Yeah, and there's that kind of compulsion to feel full up all the time, that people often will have, whether it's full of pain or full of emotion or full of food or full of something, there's that need to feel full. And with love, it's the opposite. It's kind of empty. So that need to feel full has, kind of panics. Goes, quick, grab hold of something. Oh, fear, nice. Yes, let's stuff that down there. Very nice, fill the gap. But I think it's something that, I guess we're brought up with, because when we're kids, we learn that love equals, oh, be careful, don't go too far, or be careful, don't go too fast, or be careful, keep within my eyesight, or be careful, or whatever. So we grow up believing that fear is love, because it's not just, yes, feel comfortable being yourself or whatever. It's a, let me control everything you do, and I know with children there is an aspect of having to, look out for them and all of that, but it is something that we're brought up to believe, and people go, oh, they're a really caring person because they're telling you to be careful and to watch out and to make sure that you don't fall and to all of this stuff. I remember once years and years ago, I was working at this place and I worked as an office manager there, and I had to go and check out the roof for some reason. It's one of those flat roofs, and I went up there with the operations manager and the guy who looked after the building. And I'm walking across this flat roof, and there's probably 5 meters between me and the end, the edge. And it's a big roof. And she's standing behind me going, be careful, be careful. Oh my God, don't get too near, be careful. And the guy with her was going, oh, isn't she a good, caring boss? I'm going, what the fuck? One, she's talking to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Two, have you seen how far away from the edge I am?
Oh man. Yeah, and like who knows, like you're like, be careful, might scare someone, they lose their balance or something, you never know.
Might freak them out so much that they'll trip over their own feet and fall over the edge,
Exactly, right? Send you right over.
Yeah. But it also shows a complete lack of trust. It's kind of like if you're saying that, especially, I mean, I know in this situation I'm a grown woman and I'm not related to her, but with your children that are growing up, you're not trusting the fact that they know how to walk or they know how to do things. And sure, of course, you want to make sure they're okay, but if you constantly treat them as a younger child than they are by saying, be careful, don't do this, and oh, don't do that, when they instead need to learn how to not do that or not do that, so they need to learn that if there's an edge there, they need to make sure that they don't stand right hanging over it off balance, all of these things. But instead you keep saying, be careful, they're going to grow up believing that you don't trust them, subconsciously, because part of that is a lack of trust. If there's a constant, oh no, you can't do that, therefore I always have to watch over you and make sure you're okay. I mean, and we, some mothers never give this up. I mean, my mum still hasn't, and I'm, nearly 50. It's
a really good point that you raised though, and those are other stories that I feel like are so deeply drilled into us. Like you said, to be a caring person, this is how people care. My mother told me, and they tried to protect me, so by trying to protect my child in this way, and that way, which is so interesting because there's that aspect of protection, but now there's this push to get the vaccine, right, which is in my opinion, just putting them in harm's way, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but they're telling you that you're protecting, they're manipulating the story and saying, this is what you do to protect your child. This is what we do to protect everyone. And it's just like, no, it's not.
No, no, absolutely. And you see those photos of children who are wearing, children in prams, wearing masks and covered in like a hazmat suit, to keep them away from the dangers. And the mothers of those children think they're doing it because they love their child and they're protecting them. But really it's child abuse, and it's an over inverted commas caring. And again, it's that fear. It's fear. It's fear that my child will get sick from something that it's not going to get sick from. But, you know, it's not trusting in the child's immune system. It's not trusting in your own common sense. It's not trusting that, well, it's not trusting in anything. It's just completely succumbing to fear.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's so ingrained. It's so deep, these elements of fear, and I guess, right, it all goes back to the fear of death. So that's the main, really, right? Why are you afraid of getting COVID? Probably because you're afraid of dying or suffering, I guess, in some way. But um, it's just like how do if you're not doing spiritual work, or work that like we're doing with the rats, it's like how do you even stand a chance, especially with like, having parents who were likely in fear who raised you, having the stories pushed by the media, everything's in fear, telling you to be afraid, you have to do this, or something bad will happen, like all this fear. It's incredible.
Well, it's a constant in every aspect. Like you say, it's a bombardment from the media. I mean, at the moment it's completely heightened, but even in inverted commas normal times, there's that bombardment from the media, you know, and it is a constant fear. I mean, we live in a fear culture and we always have done. And that's really one of the reasons why people don't know what love is, because anything outside of this fear culture is unknown. It's scary because the fear bubble is very safe. It's very predictable. You be careful or you will fall off the edge of the building. You be careful or you will whatever, And anyone who, stands on the edge of the building or walks up the stairs, is seen as crazy or a rebel or anything like that. And yeah, it's a crazy culture.
It makes more sense to me, though, that they drove God out of the culture as much as possible, because if you trust, it's trust, right? Like you were talking about. If you trust that everything is right in God, I mean, obviously there's the aspects of taking actions and stuff like that. These things like can get really complex to talk about, to people who don't have a basis in it, but it's that trusting that everything, like, you can die. I could die right now. I could have a brain aneurysm or something, right? Not a pleasant thing to think about, not necessarily the route people might want to go, but anything could happen at any time. So, are you going to do you want to live in fear, or do you want to not live in fear? So, which would be love, but maybe it's easier for people to digest, to say, well, I don't want to be in fear. Maybe that's a good first step. Well, I don't want to live in fear. I'm noticing my actions are driven by fear. Let's just not do that. Instead of maybe God and love it's too big of a step, too big of a jump for them. But at least like putting down the fear might be a good first step there.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, like you say, it's if you died of a brain aneurysm, not that we're trying to make that happen, of course,
Right,
but
exactly.
but if that were to happen to somebody, they couldn't predict it. They couldn't know it was going to happen. So living in fear up until that point of potentially dying of a brain aneurysm is only going to ruin your life up until that moment. It's you know fearing things that haven't happened yet is crazy sometimes. Or fearing things that potentially may never happen. You know, it's like, I don't know, being afraid of heights and never going up high, but still being afraid of heights and like, oh no, my God, I might die from, falling off a building. It's like, but you never go above the first floor. So why are you even fearful of that? It's be fearful of heights when you're standing on a height with the potential that you might fall from the height, but don't allow the fear of heights to ruin your life on the ground. It's just a bit crazy. Things are crazy though at the moment. They really are. I mean, in all definitions of the word crazy. It's insane. It is insane. But fear is, ramping up and ramping up. And I think that, those of us who are fortunate enough to study with our Atima know what the opposite of fear is. And I think all we can do is just be in it, be in the opposite of fear, be in love. Because it might have the effect on others that, for example, I talked about earlier, or it might not. It doesn't even matter. But I feel that it's important for us not to even consider that fear, not even to look at it, because what's the point? If the world's gone crazy, the world's gone fearful, it wants to contract into this tiny little, blinkered view of what life is, then let it. I'm not going to do that. So just because you're doing it doesn't mean to say that I have to even look at what you're doing. Thank you very much.
And even if we want to look at from the perspective of everything outside of us being our own projection, then why do we care about it anyway? Care about that it's contracting. It's like, okay, well, I'll be over here, or like, oh, interesting things that are going on over there,
Yeah. But I think it's, for people to use fear, project fear, or use fear as a form of love, in inverted commas, or masquerading as love in a way to control others, is absolutely abhorrent. I feel that, it is a form of imprisonment, so to wrap somebody up in ropes of fear and tell them that it's love is the same as kidnapping somebody and keeping them locked in a room, in one respect. Not in a physical sense, but in an emotional sense, it's exactly the same. Because you're trapping them in a box of your making, and you're controlling their movements in it, or definitely not allowing them outside of it. Well, it's a form of not torture exactly, it's a form of abuse, really. And this happens all the time. People abusing others and calling it love.
Yeah. It's the conditional love versus unconditional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when it goes to extremes, let's say it's a partnership relationship, or, dynamic, and one partner beats the other one up. That's an extreme form of it. And people go, oh no, that's terrible, that's shocking. But they don't have any qualms or disagreement with somebody mentally controlling another person, or telling them they'll only love them if they're thin, or they'll only love them if they're good, or they'll only love them if they behave in a certain way. It's just a milder version of the same thing, but where do you draw the line? And I draw the line right at the beginning, because it's all not right.
Right at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel that also it's, as we touched on earlier, fear masquerading as love is imprisonment, but love is the ultimate freedom. So love not only sets you free, but it sets everyone else that you love free too, because it takes away all impositions or expectations or anything that you put on them, any desires or anything else. And it just means that you can all be free in that sense, so I don't see why anyone wouldn't want that. Talking about freedom again, in that you're free to just love people as they are, exactly as they are. They're then free to be themselves completely. And there's no judgment there, there's no criticism there, there's no emotion there, there's no hurt feelings there. It's just love. So, yeah, everyone should do it.
Yeah, I've been asking myself recently, because that's what it comes down to me. I was like, how can I love, these people or these situations more unconditionally? Because I was like, I know the relationship that I'm having with what's going on it's not beneficial for me. And if I can't be, in that place of love, which is, like you said earlier, it's objective, that if out of anything, it'd probably be the most objective experience that I think a human being could experience, then any actions that I'm taking, no matter how well intended they are, aren't going to be as beneficial as they could be unless they were coming from that place. So I ask myself, I'm like, how can I unconditionally love this, or how can I love it more than I'm currently loving it? And I don't know that I've had many great answers yet, but At least I'm asking the question.
Yeah. Mm. And sometimes, I feel in my experience anyway, sometimes being the most loving, the most loving thing you can do is remove yourself from a situation. I'm not talking about you and the circumstances you're talking about, but in my experience that, for example, with my family, I love them. And I feel like I do love them unconditionally, but I've removed myself from interaction with them, whether it's temporarily or who knows what will happen. I'm open to what happens, but I don't want to willingly or continuously put myself in a situation where I am feeling criticized constantly or berated constantly or judged constantly, because why would I torture myself? That's not loving myself. And that's not very loving towards them either. Well, my mum really, not my sister, but it's not very loving towards my mum. To put us in that situation where she feels this compulsion to do that. She could do it in her head from a distance. That's fine. Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah. That was our conversation on fear masquerading as love. If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon so you're notified of our next post. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.